Chris Voss gave me a huge 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon, and I'm grateful to him for bringing you today's video. The Cabbage Merchant versus Safi, Scions of the Earth Spider, and Heibai. Yeah, we curve out nicely here, so I think I definitely want to keep. Start off with a Mana Dork in the Gilded Goose, which we might have to use the food for in order to make a mana into the Stride Hanger Automaton. That will make a lot of Thopters with our food from the Cabbage Merchant. Sol Ring on turn 1 into the Arcane Signet for Safi Eriksdotter. And we managed to draw into a third land, so we might be able to keep the food from the Gilded Goose, which will enter with a token. So this is really good. It means that we can get our commander down on turn 2, and I have high hopes for it making a lot of tokens, especially in the early game, although we've already dodged 2 of those from the Safi and the fast mana. Do we want to see Heibai on the channel? Should I build a deck around this? Not sure if we care about shrines or not. Solemn Simulacrum, another artifact. Going to help fix the colours because he's got an Arch of Arazka in play, as well as some more colourless mana. But I'm thinking we're still going to see some non-creature spells being cast into our commander by the other 2 players, so get down the land and the Cabbage Merchant on turn 2. And there's the first one, Wild of Growth straight away, going to make a food. And that's going on to an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, so everyone's got black mana available. And another one, Northern Air Temple, the first shrine. When it enters, drain per shrine you control, and when another shrine enters, drain for 1. 3 for 3 so far, Mirage Mirror. The question is this thing going to end up being better than Smothering Tithe? I suppose it depends on your meta and how many creature spells your opponents cast. Ranger Captain of Eos is going to tutor for a 1 mana creature. Obviously Safi is going to be a more creature based deck. Don't expect to make too many foods into this. And shooters out, and Esper Sentinel only has 1 power at least. We should have a surplus of mana in this deck, so should be able to pay into the tax on that. He's down to 2 cards already though, so if we can see the back of this sooner than later, that would be good. There is a lack of spot removal in this deck though. Okay, Summoning Station should be good. We've got some untapped shenanigans with Unwinding Clock or Seedborn Muse. This will untap itself whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard. We can sacrifice food for free with some sack outlets, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's go for the Stride Hanger Automaton, and that is going to make a Thopter every time we see a food created, which hopefully will continue throughout the game, especially against the Shrine player. So do we want to go for the Feasting Hobbit here? I think that would be alright. We're going to have to tap a couple of food for mana, and then sacrifice a tapped one for another green. And, well, I suppose it doesn't matter if I'm going to sacrifice both the foods anyway, but let's go Feasting Hobbit. That has Devour 3, so we'll just get rid of both of these food. And that means that 6 counters are going to enter on this thing, making it an 8-8. And preferably, we'd get through to the mid to late game and make this even more of a threat, but I think it's fun to start whacking players for 8 damage with this. Let's go... Yeah, let's leave our opponents alone for now. They're probably looking in our direction as it is. Starfield Vocalist is a human. What on God's earth is that? If a permanent entering causes the triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, right, so it's Panharmonicon, but for permanents, for any permanents, so we'll include their shrines that enter and have an ETB. Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of the Arcane Signet. Is that only until the end of turn? Yeah, so he's obviously trying to fix his colours with this. He wanted the green mana. He loses a mana by making this a copy of the Signet, but if it fixes his colours for a Cultivate or something, right, a Farseek, Esper Sentinel hopefully will pay for. We get a food token, and we do get our first Thopter as well, which enters as a 2-2 thanks to the Anthem effect built into this thing. He did pay for the Esper Sentinel tax. Safi into play. Doesn't have any kind of sack outlet at the moment, thankfully. Although I don't know what this is meant to be. Oh, Scavenger Grounds. Alright. I'd love Magic cards to look like Magic cards again. This exiles all graveyards. I don't think we really care about that. Yeah, so he's still down to 2 cards in hand. Hopefully won't be able to do anything with that. He can draw a card with this, and he does have the City's Blessing. And Arcbound Ravager, there we are, a sack outlet for our food tokens. which, like I said, goes well with the summoning station. We don't have too much in the ways of mana at the moment, though. We can at least drop a land for the turn. And I think I'd rather draw a card with War Room this turn than get anything down like the Emerald Medallion. Let's go through to attacks. And we'll go through to the right with a flyer. And the AA is going to be at 10 damage in total. Creatures with power less than the AA can't block it, so that goes straight through. Yeah, so we're probably making another food with the Gilded Goose, and then tapping into the War Room here. Maybe I could just do that now in case we get into something that's relevant. Although it's probably a better idea to just do it during an opponent's turn, hold up that mana for threatening something. Okay, the One Ring is more things that we can abuse with our untapped shenanigans if we ever get into those. I expect to see more shrines here because our opponent got down the Panharmonicon effect, and we don't have to worry about the burden counters on this because we've got the Ravager, so we can sacrifice the One Ring if we want to. Alright, not a shrine. Heibai instead into play, and that gets double triggers, and these just go straight onto the battlefield, they don't cast them. So gets himself a Kyoshi Island Plaza, and gets double triggers on both of his shrines, so we get drained for 2. And this is going to get a bunch of basic land ramp. See what else we dodged. An Austere Command. Bear in mind these are going to be shuffled now, so they're not on the bottom of the library anymore. Yeah, some lands and ramp basically. Saw the back of Serra's Sanctum as well. And then we saw Greater Oromancy, Yenna, and Sanctum of Shattered Heights. And that's a shrine that enters, doesn't have an ETB itself, but triggers the other ones. So a lot of land ramp occurring here. And with this thing he's going to be able to discard a card and deal damage to a target creature. So can easily deal with our commander. But yeah, ramped a hell of a lot there. 4, 8, 9, 10 and 11 mana available to him next turn. Well, the battle of the Cabbage Merchant and Smothering Tithe is going to go head to head here. We get a food token and another Thopter to that. Esper Sentinel again not being allowed to draw a card. I think paying into the tax on this is definitely slowing this player down a lot. I have a feeling that Smothering Tithe is still going to reign supreme here. At the end of the turn we see some mana being tapped by Safi, and it's not for the card draw, it is instead for Enlightened Tutor. And with this tutor, decides on the One Ring himself, so he's eager for card draw. Smothering Tithe along with the One Ring isn't ideal, but players are starting to get away from us with mana anyway. So decides to cast the One Ring of course, and gets us another Thopter and another food token. And then Path to Exile being pointed at the Ranger, Captain of Eos, and doing that before this gets a sack outlet and can be abused by Safi, I assume. It is a tutor with legs. That's being cast by the Shrines player, by the way. Can't pay into the Esper Sentinel at least, so Smothering Tithe seemingly going to get another, its first treasure even. Looks as though the Smothering Tithe tax was paid previously. Safi being sacrificed in order to be pointed at the Ranger Captain of Eos, and Safi goes back to the command zone instead of the graveyard. Oh, of course this has a sack outlet tied to it, doesn't it? So sacrifices it to its own ability in order to save it from the Path to Exile. Our opponent clearly forgot about that, the same as I did. Although it's always worth double checking your targets before you go for them, the client's being really slow. But anyway, gets another tutor upon re-entry from the Safi. He forced him to make use of his commander at least. And before the ability resolves, just want to make sure that I don't want to cast any non-creature spells. I don't have any to cast, so that's fine. And when the ring enters, it will give him protection for the rest of the turn cycle, so we're going to be turning elsewhere with our attackers seemingly. Draws a card into the Smothering Tithe. He's down to 21 already. Ugh, and a Spore Frog. Don't like seeing that. Trying to get rid of this before the Safi comes back into play is going to be ideal. 2-2 swings down the middle along with the 1-1 Esper Sentinel. In response to attacks, we see the Cabbage Merchant blocking a 1-1. That is the mirror. Yeah, the Mirage Mirror. So Esper Sentinel goes down, which was a good play by our opponent. Let's tap for some mana. And then we can pay 2 and tap for a food token, which will make a Thopter as well. And we draw into another land. Smothering Tithe is allowed to be resolved and makes another treasure token. Are we going to try and draw into a guy's cradle or something here? Maybe. We've got 3 mana on the food, and then 4 with the goose if we want to sacrifice, which means we don't have enough for Summoning Station and the Artbound Ravager this turn. I want to get both of those down at the same time, so let's go for a 1 ring as well. Tap a couple of food for 1 mana, and then 3 forests. If we just so happen to get into Guy's Cradle or something, then it could change what we do this turn. So we get protection for the rest of the turn as well, and tap it down for a card draw, and draw into another forest. So yeah, I'm not going to tap down all my food to pay for the Smothering Tithe, so we'll say no. Play a land for the turn, and we're probably fine at this point getting down the Emerald Medallion. Let's go through to combat first. 8/8 can swing in down the middle. I would still be focusing on this guy, except he just got down the 1 ring. So I'll take down a couple of Thopters, and then the rest can go to the left. Yes, that's 8 and 12 down the middle, and then 8 to the left. I don't want to make too much of an enemy of the Shrine player, but I can't just ignore him either. Unfortunately, don't have a means of protecting my stuff from the Sanctum of Shattered Heights, but with 3 cards in hand, I'm hoping he isn't going to have a land or a shrine that he wants to discard. Okay, yeah, the Spore Frog, that makes sense. Makes a copy of that. Spore Frog is the bane of a combat deck's existence. Commander's leaned way into combo wins as it is, and with something like the Spore Frog in play, you kind of have to win with a combo. So no damage dealt whatsoever, although we did force him to sacrifice his Mirage Mirror to the Spore Frog's ability, which is a sacrifice ability. Emerald Medallion and pass. Plenty of mana, and Heibai can now be tapped for its ability to make some tokens, but there's Sanctum of All as well, so the Shrine player starting to go off here. Again, double triggers, he'll get Rampant Growths and Drains from the Northern Air Temple. Actually looks as though he's run out of basics, so he underestimated how good this thing would be. Suppose if you're running this thing, then you should be running as many basics as you can, which is potentially difficult in a 5-colour deck. He doesn't have enough shrines in play to get the double triggers on this yet, at least, but that's definitely going to be the case next turn. Elesh Norn is going to keep ETBs from triggering, so that's no more Thopters for us, as long as this thing's in play. Let's go for making a food now. And now we've got a couple of chump blockers at least if we need them. But there's lots of trigger doubling going on here, so next turn is going to be very painful from this guy. The 3/4 swings down the middle. Door of Destinies ready to buff a bunch of spiders when he eventually decides to get into those. Okay, we're still getting the Thopters from the automaton. The Elesh Norn hasn't switched it off. Oh, it's a replacement effect this, that's why it's not an ETB. So yeah, it's just having a Thopter and a food enter at the same time, as opposed to putting a trigger on the stack. Should have clocked that before now. A Twitching Doll is the first spider, a Mana Dork. So I potentially, instead of tapping this War Room down in order to get the Gilded Goose activated, could potentially have held this up for mana, or for the activation. We might have had enough mana by the time the foods are done being made for the turn cycle. Anyway, 3 visits makes us another food. Hardened Scales as well for another food. Down to 1 card in hand. Plenty of mana though. Sanctum was activated there, discarded the Ketria Triome, so he's down to 1 card in hand as well. Got rid, more permanently this time, of the Ranger Captain. I think it's difficult to tell. The tutors are doing some harm, but Spore Frog is going to be a real pain as well. I suppose it doesn't do him any harm to take less damage from combat, but we could be taking this guy out, so he wouldn't have to point his removal over there, and then he could more likely focus his Sanctum of Shattered Heights on us. I don't know. Anyway, the 1 ring being activated into the Smothering Tithe during the draw phase, so that will be 3 triggers for Smothering Tithe, but he's up to 6 cards in hand here, down to 18 life though. You have to assume he wants to get down Safi here in order to keep the Spore Frog around. Plays Urza's Saga, so that now taps for a mana. And Gift of Immortality triggers us for a food again. That is going on to the Spore Frog. Excellent. Luminous Broodmoth as well. This guy's going to be incredibly difficult to get rid of. We lose our 1 life to the 1 ring as well. And there we see Eleanor Gardner, which is going to go well with what we want to do with Artbound Ravager and Summoning Station. Not sure how good Summoning Station is going to be. Well, we can't get combat damage through. But really all we are ultimately looking to do is show off the deck, so I think we're doing that quite successfully here. I think we can go through to combat. We've got 24 damage here, and then the Feasting Hobbit can go to the left, I think. So we don't take this guy out, but he's pretty close to it. We could draw cards with the One Ring first to see if that affects our plays any, but I don't want to give him even more mana, although 4's probably going to be relevant. He's only got one card in hand, so I can't imagine the 5th mana would make any difference. So we're being encouraged into the other 2 players here. Knock him down to 2, he's probably going to go down to the drains here anyway. And then during the second main we can tap down the One Ring and draw 2 cards this time. It's only turn 6, it's been a pretty fast paced game. Make more Smothering Tithe tokens. Now are we going to make use of Seaborn Muse with the Summoning Station? Would have been good to get some land ramp going with this, but that's only once at our end step, so it's pretty slow anyway. Yeah, let's go for a land. And then we've got 10, 12, so that's 6 mana. Plus 6 is 12, and then another one is 13. So I think we've got exactly enough as it happens, because Seaborn Muse costs 4. So let's go for this. So let's go Summoning Station first of all. Might as well tap that down for a Pincher token straight away, I think is fine. Never seen a Pincher token before, but that's what they look like apparently. And we can go for a 4 mana Seaborn Muse to untap all of our stuff, including the One Ring and the Pincher generator Summoning Station. Priority being held up by the Safi player, who doesn't have white mana available at the moment, thankfully. So now with Gilded Goose we can make any colour of mana, sacrifice a food token, and when we sacrifice food token it will trigger the Summoning Station. So say yes to that in order to untap it, and then tap it down again before I forget. We'll make another Pincher token, and these are artifacts unfortunately, so they're not triggering for more Thopter tokens, but we can play the Artbound Ravager, and now that can allow us to sacrifice food at will, and we can do that for free, so it will trigger this and we can tap it down freely for as many food as we have. Again, really playing into a board wipe here, but we'll have a lot of triggers on the stack due to a board wipe from the Summoning Station, so for every Thopter token that dies we will get an untap resolution from the Summoning Station, so we can tap it in between those. Sanctum of All, we'll see how much crazy damage our opponent can do now. You'd think he'd go to refill his hand here. Grab the blue 4 mana one, I think. Well, it's a blue one. When it enters, draw a card for each shrine you control, and whenever another shrine enters, draw a card. So yeah, pretty much refilling his hand here. And each opponent going to get drained, so that is the middle player going down. We will allow him to go down before we tap down the One Ring, just in case the additional mana is relevant, like I said. Although he's going to gain a bunch of mana to the Spirit Oasis anyway. Shame we didn't see many spiders from this player. And with more triggers on the stack, he's up to 6 cards in hand already. The penultimate one resolves and takes him up to 11. And then the final one will resolve, and he goes up to 16 cards in hand. Which means that this thing is definitely going to be relevant, although it can only deal damage to a creature, not a player. So down goes the middle player to the drain effects. And as we saw before, the Kyoshi Island Plaza is not going to be able to rampant growth anymore because he's fetched all of his basics. But this guy should be able to get close to a win here, surely. Austere Command. Well, if all the artifacts get wiped out, as opposed to all the creatures, then we can't make use of this thing anyway. Let's go for making a bunch of pinchers then. This is going to take a while. Can't remember if we got... I think I've got Heroic Intervention in here, so we might as well try to draw it to the One Ring. Could save us a lot of time if we draw into it. Okay, the Spore Frog was sacrificed. He decided to bring it back in with the Gift of Immortality in order to keep that in play. Luminous Broodmoth could have brought it back in, but it would have fizzled the trigger on this. Okay, well, there's the guy's cradle we've been talking about. A bit too late now, unfortunately. We also have Chromatic Orrery in here in order to play at flash speed and create ourselves a Prophet of Krufix with the Seaborn Muse, but unfortunately haven't seen that yet. So, yeah, we just have to trade out the artifacts for pincher tokens. Oh, but actually I didn't even look at the other mode. This is going to be mana value 3 or less, so it just takes out all of our stuff pretty much. Is there any point to doing this then? Not really. I suppose we can draw another card with War Room and try to see that heroic intervention. Nope, just a forest for us. But you got to see what the deck's looking to do at least, so like I said before, that's what we are ultimately aiming to do. Let's take some life gain. Triggers the summoning station. We might as well activate it here just in case this guy can interfere, but I wouldn't have thought he's going to. So I'll make a mana with the commander, another mana with the bird by sacrificing a food, which we can only do once. And again, untaps the summoning station. You see where we're looking to go here. Sacrifice a food to gain some life. We do kind of have our engine in hand again. It's just going to take a while to carry on with it because we've got Queener Coup Gourmet, which can make frog tokens as opposed to flyers. Crack another food token, and that's all we'll be able to do here, I think. It's a shame that we're not going to be able to make a big creature with Disciple of Freyalise and sack something like this to refill the hand, although we've got enough cards in hand now anyway. So it seems as though all these small creatures are going down ultimately. Actually, the Spore Frog, I don't know why he sacrificed that when he did, because he's actually just fizzled his own indestructible thing. This isn't going to come back onto the copy of Spore Frog that enters with the Luminous Broodmoth now. Anyway, our commander goes back into the command zone, and we can see all those summoning station tokens. So like I said, with the creature-based Wrath, that would have been the case with all the Thopter tokens, and we could have tapped for a pincher in between each of these resolving. It's not worthy that we've lost one of our artifact sack outlets now, so the One Ring is becoming more of a threat with regards to the life loss. We've still got Krark-Clan Ironworks available to us, which we could sack it to. So now Luminous Broodmoth brings the Spore Frog and the Solemn Simulacrum back into play. Solemn doesn't trigger due to the Elesh Norn. Barely even started the Shrine Player's turn yet, but it's taken a few minutes to get through it so far, thanks to all my messing around in response and after the board wipe. Airbender Ascension is going to airbend something out of the way, I think. Okay, he's airbending his own Heibai, which I think he can play for 2 mana straight away. Oh, he gets multiple triggers, of course, so he's going to get rid of the Spore Frog, which is not permanent. He can just get it back down to play again straight away. Seaborn Muse, we'd rather not be casting again, but at least it's only going to be 2 mana. Deciding to sacrifice the Spore Frog again in response. I'd rather have it in the exile zone, ready to be played for 2 mana personally. Maybe you can reanimate it. Yeah, you can do it on the same turn with airbending, so a 2 mana commander is going to get a bunch of triggers here. 3 triggers from that, and 3 from the Airbender Ascension. So at the beginning of the end step, if it has 4 or more quest counters, exile a creature you control and return it, which obviously goes well with his commander. So got himself into another shrine. That was the Crescent Island. When it enters, make a bunch of monks with prowess, and when another shrine enters, make a monk. So it's more card draw. Is this thing a May ability? You have to draw a card when it enters. He's still got 61 cards in the deck, but that's worth noting, considering all the triggers he's getting here. So when these tokens enter, it continues to trigger the Airbender Ascension. So the reason my clock's going down is because when I had a bunch of triggers on the stack, I didn't auto-yield them. I said no to them manually for a while because I'm worried about the client crashing with all these permanents in play. So hopefully it doesn't crash on us here. It's funny, this thing now has 32 counters on it. Right, so all the Crescent Island Temple triggers have done now, so it is 24 prowess creatures in total have landed. So he's now got 15 cards in hand. He's about to draw 4 more from the Spirit Omen. Okay, so this ends up with 75 counters on it. That's irrelevant now, really. It goes from 15 to 19 cards in hand. Can't Rampant Growth. And we've got the second trigger on Heibai yet. This time lands himself. Client's really lagging. A Honden of Infinite Rage. So 7 shrines he controls, and during the upkeep deals damage to a target equal to the number of shrines, so you would think that that would go straight onto this guy, and then he can take us out with combat damage quite easily thanks to all the prowess creatures. When that shrine enters, it of course triggers the blue one for more card draw. He gets more prowess tokens as well. So I think he's on 28 monk tokens now. Okay, and a black one. I think this one's Drain as well. Sanctum of Stone Fangs. At the beginning of the first main phase, each opponent is drained for X, where X is the shrines, and he's on 8 shrines at the moment. So even more monk tokens, even more card draw. This guy's down to 6 life at the moment. I'm not sure. No, he's not going to take enough. He is going to survive unless we see another shrine enter. Can't deal combat damage thanks to the Spore Frog, don't forget. Oh, actually, he can use the Airbender Ascension to flicker his commander and get another shrine into play, can't he? So it's likely this guy goes down before he gets another turn, even through the Spore Frog. Alright, so 30 monk tokens and 27 cards in hand at the moment. Still hasn't made a land for the turn, so shocks in a Hallowed Fountain. He's cast something here, so now we have to get through all the prowess triggers. It was a burgeoning, so I'm not sure it was really worth bothering to do that. Yeah, these trigger on shrines entering as opposed to enchantments. I don't think he has no max hand size either, so it's not like he can get a bunch of lands into play. Yeah, so this guy just decides to scoop. He's going to die to this getting flickered anyway, like we said. Luckily the auto resolve on all those monk prowess triggers went through pretty quickly. Can't deal damage to us thanks to the Spore Frog, but he's deciding to try it out anyway. Now the only thing that could really help us here, and not really, is the Azuri's Predation, but we're not going to be able to afford it thanks to a lack of ramp this game. But it's good to see an Avatar deck going off at least. We've got 3 more triggers to go through with the Hay Bear. A Honden of Seen Winds. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw per shrine you control. But the main thing he's worried about here is the Northern Air Temple. That's going to be draining us by a fair amount here, although we're still at 24. It's funny, a useful thing with this is that you can fail to find, so if you do decide to search, you'll shuffle everything that you've just put on the bottom of the library in an attempt to grab something that you saw again straight off the top, so that's worth noting. It's not completely useless if you can't continue to ramp with it. So with all this resolving here, we're seeing a lot more monk tokens. He's got 33 cards left in hand after the Spirit Oasis resolved. It's crazy how quick the game has become now. It's only turned 6 and it's in some insane board states. So we're going to draw cards to the One Ring, just out of curiosity really. I might get down Seaborn Muse just to draw on my opponent's turn as well. Out of curiosity, we go down to 13, and that does next to nothing. So draw, it'll be 4 cards this time. And we've got Peregrine Took, which could go infinite with something, but we haven't drawn into it, so I'm not going to be able to do that. It's the Nuka-Cola vending machine that it goes infinite with. We sacrifice 3 food in order to draw a card to this, and that makes 3 treasure. When the 3 treasure are made with this in play, it makes the food as well, and we can just go infinite for card draw, but that doesn't do anything for us here anyway. So our opponent's got us no matter what here. Let's just go for the guy's Cradle. Triggers the Burgeoning for our opponent, who has 7 cards in hand, and he managed to get himself into that Serra's Sanctum. A 2 mana Seaborn Muse, because it was airbended. So let's just go for getting our commander into play, just for the fun of it. Noteworthy is likely going to be able to get rid of our Seaborn Muse with this, because it can go after a creature or planeswalker. Okay, he's gone for casting something, because we've got a bunch of prowess triggers on the stack. That was a Swords to Plowshares onto the Seaborn Muse instead. We were never going to do anything with it. We need the instant speed stuff with Chromatic Orrery in order to have any chance, but I still don't think we would have been able to do anything regardless there. Our opponent is way too far ahead. So we'll give our opponent a chance to take us out on his turn here. It's double triggers on the Honden of Infinite Rage. So that is 20 damage onto us with those 2 triggers, and we are at 15 life, so he's putting the Sanctum of All on the stack first for some reason. So let me just fast forward through this instead of conceding. Alright, but he just failed to find there and pass through to the Honden doing the damage to us, so yeah, the Hay-Buy is pretty good apparently. I think we saw how good the Cabbage Merchant can be as well. It does depend on your meta, as I mentioned at some point during the game. If you're in a heavily creature-based meta, then it's not going to be anywhere near as good, but we saw a lot of triggers there for those tokens. Didn't get into that much mana until the late game when it was already too late. and we didn't really get into any token doubling effects or anything like that either, so there's a lot to be said for this deck, and I think it ought to be run again. If any of you are interested, then you should let me know in the comments as ever. Huge thank you to the patrons for your financial support. I'm TribalKai. Thank you for watching.